Hello, class, and welcome to our review of our learning outcomes, right, as they relate to our critical thinking, terms and strategies, and essays 1, and now soon to be essay 2. So, ideally, when we think of our learning outcomes, right, they are to help us achieve critical thinking so that we can be aware of the rhetorical strategies. We want to have that rhetorical awareness. We want to have global awareness, culture, society. How does this relate to the human experience? What do we learn about life? Right? So, by doing what? By analyzing the readings, by composing our responses in which we evaluate those readings, right? And take our analysis and synthesize our analysis with other perspectives. So we demonstrate that global awareness. When we analyze based on the critical thinking strategies, right, from writing logically, thinking critically, we're demonstrating rhetorical awareness. When we analyze based on the strategies from reading and writing about literature, the elements of fiction, the elements of poetry, we're achieving that rhetorical awareness. And we're able to use our critical thinking skills to achieve that rhetorical awareness, that global awareness, right? So when we think of our critical thinking strategies and terms, right? Issue, I'm on page 72. When you're focusing your topic, writing logically, thinking critically says make sure you focus on your issue. What is the idea? What theme? What do we learn about life? I think for essay 1, the issue could have been treatment of women in marriages and relationships. The issue could have been female dependence versus female independence. The issue could have been autonomy, identity, love, marriage, right? Again, there's a self-assertion, as one of the critics said. So there was a lot of possible themes for you to think about when you analyzed the last sentence of the story of an hour as the focal point. Did she die of literal joy? Was she happy to see him? Figurative joy? Was it something else? Or was it ironic joy? Was she actually sad? So again, we applied the critical thinking strategies when we analyzed, right, that theme, that issue. What do we learn about life? Right? And then obviously, as the book tells us, you make your claim with your thesis, right? So now your thesis for essay 1, right, as you're fulfilling your student learning outcome, as you're analyzing, composing, evaluating, right, your outcomes for this course, what specifically are you going to focus on, right? And the thesis, I kind of gave you a head start for the last essay, right? Mrs. Mallard does or does not die of joy, right? Okay, now let's get more specific. Mrs. Mallard died, she literal joy, ironic joy, figurative joy, right? So be specific in that thesis. What aspect of joy or of her relationship or of love were you going to focus on? And I thought everybody did a really nice job on essay 1. And as my feedback stated, hopefully, everybody's feeling confident moving into essay 2, because if there was anything you should have fixed on essay 1, I gave you a chance to revise it, and now you want to avoid making those same mistakes on essay 2. So our textbook, right, chapter 4, written argument in writing logically, thinking critically, right, identify the issue. I kind of gave you the issue for essay 1, right? Does Mrs. Mallard die of JOY? Now for essay 2, you get to pick. So consider the title of the poem. Consider the first lines of the poem. Consider the last lines of the poem. What do we learn about life? What issue or issues is the poem focusing on? And how will your analysis of the poem, right, and your analysis of the critics, when you evaluate, how will you synthesize your analysis and your evaluation of the poem, the evaluation of the critics, breaking things down into their parts, looking at those elements of fiction, those elements of poetry? How are you going to bring it all together to make that point about your issue? Okay? Now, as you're developing essay 2, right? Remember the strategies for the intro paragraph. And again, this is part of your learning outcomes. You're composing, right? On page 76, the book gives you 4 effective strategies, right, for providing background information on your subject and topic, right? What theme or issues you're going to focus on, and what's your specific poem, right? The thesis is very clear, right? You should have a clear thesis, and you should have a sentence of support, right, that lets the reader know what elements of fiction and elements of poetry, just like essay 1. Only now you have 4 more strategies to think about when providing background, right? When providing information to orient your reader to your poem and your topic. And again, why do we do this? Because we want to demonstrate rhetorical awareness, right? What does a good intro paragraph have when we compose it? It has background on your subject and topic and theme. It has a thesis. It has support, right? The bold-faced word rhetoric on page 75, right, says the art of using language to good effect, to prove, to convince, to persuade. So when you're providing that background, that's setting the reader up for your claim. What is the point of the poem? What do we learn about life by analyzing the poem? That's what your thesis should answer, and then your support should provide the elements of fiction or the elements of poetry that you're going to focus on. How are you going to use language to good effect to prove, to convince, or to persuade your reader about the point of that poem? So, rhetoric, a part of our learning outcomes, a part of our critical thinking strategies. And last, right, as we review the 4 possible strategies for providing background information in your intro, right? You might begin with a narrative. I always refer to it as an anecdote, right? A story about your observations, your readings, your experiences, right? Invoke your ethos. You might begin with a quote, just as, right, I suggested everybody should quote from the last sentence of the story of an hour in their intro, right? You might begin with a quote from the poem and use that as the springboard to start your intro paragraph. You might start from a Rogerian standpoint and look at both sides and maybe give readers background on what the fuss is about, what are different opposing views or contradictory ideas or contradictory themes present in the poem. Is anything really juxtaposed for emphasis? Right? And also, right, as they say, an explanation, a background. Give some sentences about what the theme is you're writing about, who the author is, maybe a little background on the author, explain when they wrote it, explain a little bit about their life, explain a little bit about the theme or themes that you're focusing on. So hopefully this is helpful as you are constructing your arguments and thinking about, right, how we're achieving our learning outcomes, right, when we're completing our essays. And we did a nice job of achieving those outcomes with essay 1, and let's do more of the same with essay 2. Thanks for watching and listening. Let me know if you have any questions. Until next time.